they weren't lying when they said that the lights are very bright. can't really see a lot of you. But those who are here, can we just ask a quick question? Who is from a startup? Okay, raise your hand if you're from a startup. No one. Great.
Oh, wow.
Great to know. Who is from a VC fund or an investor? Okay, we have 2, 3, 4. Okay, a couple of people. That's promising. That's going to be interesting, right?
I'm impressed that you actually see them.
Yeah, so
yeah, exactly.
I have a very interesting conversation today to discuss with these wonderful women in tech and in media. So we have Kate, senior writer from tech.eu, and we have Irina, the co-founder and CEO of Recursive. So thank you, ladies, so much for coming here.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for this wonderful, massive crowd that will get an applause after that. Well, at least we have 10 people. So
we're just going to keep talking, and
we'll
you can enjoy.
Talking, yeah.
And feel free to come to the front. Don't be shy.
Yeah.
You can, and
we're going to be just fine.
We can even ask a few questions if you feel so inclined.
Yeah. Also, considering it's going to be lunchtime, so we can just extend it for like another hour or so.
Yeah, we can talk a lot. We're journalists. We're used to talking, right?
For all of you who are on a diet. Okay.
Okay. So we're talking about tech investments through the global media lens. So maybe for the wonderful 7 or 10 people that are in the audience, can you just explain exactly what this media lens is?
Maybe I can start.
Yeah, absolutely.
First of all, I wouldn't say that we're global. We're very much focused on Central and Eastern Europe. And when it comes to our lens, I would say that it is specific also for the startup sector. So, of course, we are journalists, so we research, we curate information, we try to make sense of the data, of the stories that we get in touch with. There are a lot of personal stories that we also cover in the Recursive. And I guess in a period or in a time where we are completely overloaded by information, journalists have a very critical role to put everything into the context and to help you make sense of what is out there. Now, when it comes to our region, I guess Europe and also Central and Eastern Europe, what we see is that there is an increased activity. So there are more and more deals happening. And I think for founders, but also for investors, it's even harder to have a big picture of what is happening out there in the market. So we are here to help. And when it comes to the Recursive, I would say that we have identified ourselves also as an integral part of this ecosystem. So we always try to be. First of all, we are operating as a startup ourselves. That's why my title is also a co-founder. When we founded the company, we started changing our office. We were in a different co-working space every 3 months. So we were kind of like not this media that is observing from above, but we were part of this community. And I think this is what gave us our unique advantage of growing organically very fast. We know the people in person, so we try to be part of this community. And given the fact that the entrepreneurial mindset have been broken due to different moments in history in Eastern Europe, we see our role also as an inspirators. So we try to tell the success stories so that the next generation of entrepreneurs understand that if he can do it or if she can do it, then I can do it too. That's how we have defined our mission at the Recursive. But I'm also very curious to hear more about TechEU because we have a very similar beginning, actually.
I think so,
yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, at TechEU, obviously we cover Europe, that's a given, UK as well, we also cover Ukraine, and some outliers, some places like Kyrgyzstan, Armenia, sometimes there's some really interesting stuff happening there. And I think we're also really looking at what's not happening. So, for example, what's not being funded, what companies are least represented in terms of having their own VCs, for example, and what regions are coming and going as well, what level of funding. There's some really interesting discussions which I may go into about what levels are getting the most funding as well, whether we're talking pre-seed, Series A, C, D, etc. So I think it's all of the above, really.
So talking about following the money, right? So you're not necessarily just following the money and just talking about the money. So someone raises a pre-seed, seed, Series A, whatever, it doesn't matter. So how are you looking into the stories behind the numbers? And perhaps there were some of the stories from this year that kind of made you go, wow, this is absolutely incredible. Could you share those examples?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that's really stuck out for me that kind of started last year and is really growing this year is materials innovation. So we're talking about being able to manipulate things at a cellular level to create new products. An example might be wound dressings for people like a burn victim, things like that. And that a lot of that is spun out of universities. So it's that deep academic research, and having a VC that's embedded in both often a health environment but also a financial environment can bring that over the line to commercialization. Because when we're talking about things like health tech in particular, we're talking about very long procurement cycles, all the regulations and things like that. But it also extends that to things like side stream products, for example, turning a pine tree in a Danish forest into an oil that can be used in replacement of palm oil in food. And palm oil is in like, what, 50% of foods these days? Processed foods.
Okay.
So there's a lot of those really interesting things happening, and I'm intentionally choosing some examples here that aren't fintech. Fintech is great, but I want to show you some of the other things we see in our work as well.
Irina, what about the CE region? Were there any stories that make you go, this is amazing?
Well, first of all, I would still like to try to make sense a bit of the data that I'm seeing right now on the market. There were a very negative prognosis for 2024. And despite them, we actually see an increase in the investment volumes. What surprises me, or maybe it totally makes sense, is that we see still actually fewer rounds. So there are larger rounds being invested in less companies. And despite everything, we have 4 new unicorns, I believe, in Central and Eastern Europe. So 11 labs, we have Creatio in Ukraine, we have Muse, I think, from Czech Republic. The 4th one would be Blue Ground in Greece. Yes, that was also another great story. And I guess these success stories, they show that we can now produce unicorns in a very efficient way because the market is still undercapitalized, in Central and Eastern Europe in a systemic way. I think this is what we see. There are not that many, I wouldn't call them outliers anymore. We have these cohesive ecosystems that are actually able to produce these success stories. And unicorns is just a vanity metric, but it actually shows the health of the ecosystems. What also kind of like surprised me this year, everyone is complaining about AI, that there is the hype, and still most of the investments go into companies who have AI in their core product. So I guess we are all now trying to make sense of the next wave of innovation that is going to happen. And the third thing, and here I feel very solidaric as a female founder, I actually see more investments in women-founded companies. If we were at 2%, I think, like 2 years ago, now I think the latest numbers were actually at 6, 7. So we see that even the regulators and their policies and the awareness that have been created has actually an effect. So,
Still, though, a drop in the ocean, no? If you look at it, but it's at least it's a positive prognosis.
It's definitely not proportional. I totally agree here with you. I think around 25–30% depends on what kind of statistics you're looking at are actually women-founded startups. Last but not least, I am also very happy that in the personal conversations, for instance, I'm hosting our podcast, where we're trying to bring the story behind the success story. And often, it's not that glamorous, It's not, just confetti life and success after success. Actually, there is a lot of zigzag. There are a lot of missteps. I'm happy that we are now more and more open to talk about our failures and our vulnerabilities. I see more and more founders also opening up about the reality of entrepreneurship, that it's not only what we often portray in the media, but actually there is a dark side into the whole thing that you need to manage.
You know what, it's funny you say that because it's something I've seen too. I literally was on a panel a couple of weeks ago talking about failure in entrepreneurship, strangely enough. And I started as a journalist writing in Silicon Valley, where it was completely different. You were a winner if you had a couple of failed startups behind you. It showed that you had a get-go spirit to keep going, this resilience. Whereas in Europe, it's not seen in quite the same light. And we know that invariably, 60% plus of startups, to be generous, fail in some capacity. or no longer exist. But so investors, I think, are actually being a bit more strategic, and there's some very interesting things happening right now around that. We've not only seen, while the investment cycle has been down, we've seen investors spending more time looking after their portfolio companies, but we've also seen the rise of commercial VCs as one example, or company VCs, where a company will be particularly in OEMs, manufacturing, automotive, those kinds of sectors. Very, very interesting trend to watch. A number of the VCs have dedicated programs for their startups. For example, childcare programs, mentoring, leadership, because being an entrepreneur at 25 doesn't mean you're trained how to run a company, And a lot of them are bringing back this, particularly when we look at some of the more established companies that are struggling, those issues about innovation versus execution, and them saying the problem was not the innovation, it was the actual execution in practice.
I would like to bring the conversation back to what's happening in the industry, right? So would you say that the investment might be on the rise, but of course it's not what it used to be, and now everyone's talking about artificial intelligence. And it would be silly if at this panel we would not talk about artificial intelligence, right? You have to sprinkle AI here and there.
Yeah.
But everyone's talking about AI, and Irina, you did say that more investors are investing in AI. So how much of AI is real AI, or how much just someone sprinkles AI for God knows what, that is just fluff? And also, how do you try to navigate as journalists, because obviously you need to kind of dive deep into that?
I literally was talking to a VC a couple of days ago about this, and she's in health tech, and she said out of, I wrote it down so I got the number right, 7,000 pitches from companies since 2018, over 50% have mentioned AI. So that is a lot of smoke, And she was very critical of that, because her thesis was basically, she was very clear, I'm not anti-AI, there is a very good role for AI, but sometimes that prioritization is at the deprioritization of things like in healthcare, things like, technical hardware, really tangible things that are actually changing industries. Even some of those back-end tasks where people really want to be patient-centric software, maybe they can be looking at other sides of investment. So I think it's about, when we say AI, what use cases are we actually talking about? Do they have value, and do they have value over something else? Because at TechEU we get, I'd probably say, a fair chunk of press pitches that are also written in generative AI.
But you can tell, right, when someone's writing a pitch
Let's say
Gen AI.
the quality is very clear.
Okay. So whoever's writing, out of 8 people now, I think it's a little bit more of you. Don't do it. Don't do it.
So I think it's part of the innovation cycle. But the other issue I see coming out very strongly right now is this issue of data sovereignty, particularly when we talk about LLMs. What data is in the LLMs? Is it largely American data? Do we have data in other languages, other regions? And one example that's been thrown around a lot is Silo AI, who was sold, a company that was very big on data sovereignty for the Nordics, having Nordic languages in their models that they were developing in their software. They were sold to AMD a few months ago for about 650 million, I think. And a lot of people in Europe are really pissed about that, because they're like, we're taking that innovation and that skill out of Europe.
Yeah. Irina, what are your thoughts on that, on AI and sprinkling it everywhere?
So in our case, we actually decided to go analytically into the topic. Okay. And on the November 12th, we're going to publish the second edition of our AI report, or we call it the State of AI Innovation in Central and Eastern Europe. And in this report, we managed to create an index of around 1,350 companies who have AI in their core product. Looking at them, what I can say at this point is that if we want to talk about real innovation, quite often it actually comes from scientific research and has a longer R&D cycle. So we're speaking quite often here of deep tech companies. I'm still expecting that there will be a lot of innovation happening on the application product, on an application layer, and also on the way you commercialize a certain service. AI is here to stay, and it's going to impact a lot of industries, and it's going to impact the business model. So we are still, I believe, in this situation where we are going to see which of the business models are going to be winning. Exactly. We saw that with Web
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we see that also with the next industrial revolution, as we actually call it. So, as mentioned, there is a lot of hype. There are a lot of startups who are using that as a buzzword. We saw that with blockchain. It didn't work. It's not going to work this time as well. More and more, AI is not a vertical anymore, but it's actually a horizontal technology that is going to affect all of the industries. So we won't be speaking of AI companies
As a standalone.
100%.
as a standalone.
Agree.
It's going to be somehow affecting
It'll
all
be
the companies.
ubiquitous at some
Exactly,
level.
it will be
Yeah.
ubiquitous. That's the word. And I have a tip here. So talking to VCs, and especially those who I would respect the most, they're slightly irritated when you speak about AI, so don't mention it. Don't position your
100%.
company in this way. Talk about the problem that you're solving. Talk about the size of the market. Talk about how your customers can benefit from the solution that you're providing. Don't go with these buzzwords. It never worked. It won't work this time as well.
And I think that adds a business model. Do you have a business model that people will pay for?
Yeah.
Which is often where people get stuck. They can have a great product, it's proven, they've done pilots with OEMs or whoever, but when they get to the bit where people have to pay for it, they get stuck.
Yes, and another thing that popped to my mind, also I see investors becoming more and more sophisticated when it comes to artificial intelligence. Quite often they would have an AI expert there, or they would, have their own research methodology, so you can't fool them that easily as we were
Couple of years
maybe
ago, right?
possible, as we could do that in 2021. It's just not working
that's funny.
anymore.
But life is not the same as it was in 2021
No.
anymore, right? Like everything has changed.
I can't even remember how it was 2021. There is
That
so
was like
much
a
that happened
century
back
ago.
then.
That was an
1
innovation
year is like
cycle ago.
50 years now. I'm worried that we're running out of time
Yeah.
and that the people do want to go and have their lunch. So I
Yes.
have two questions for both of you. So first is, of course, we spoke about blockchain as a buzzword. AI is still happening, but it feels like it's slowly being more regulated, let's put it that way. First question is, which industry do you think will be very impactful in the coming year or in the coming years? And is there a startup that you think may be under the radar for the time being, but will be making big waves also, like in 2025? And we have like 1 minute 43 seconds for
So, I mean, what I can speak about what I'm personally excited about. So, with the whole AI, we are now becoming more and more aware of the energy problem that we have. So I'm super excited about energy transition. I wouldn't say that I know someone who is under the radar. I think, the winners, yeah. For me, it's hard to make sense of this vertical at this point, but we definitely need to manage this transition if we're going to be able to afford AI. Yeah. I was just reading a recent study that was actually showing that I think 100-word prompt in ChatGPT costs you like, I think, 1 bottle of water.
Yeah.
And it's not that much electricity. So this is something that personally, as a millennial / Gen Z, worries me a lot. Now, the other sectors that I'm personally super excited about is actually space tech.
Okay.
And I'm surprised to see a lot of under-the-radar companies still, which are from Europe, which are also based or have their roots in Bulgaria, which is my home country. So I'm super excited about this one. And I'm curious to see what 11 Labs in Poland will do.
Yeah.
Their product is really impressive. Maybe this could be another UiPath story. I don't know, but I'm definitely following.
Kate, before we get kicked out of stage, because I see that this is going to be happening, what about you?
I'm going to do a really quick one. Fernride, German company, mobility. They basically have remote-controlled trucks for use off-road. For example, in a shipping container environment where they can move products back and forth all day, 24/7.
Nice.
So it's reducing, driver shortages, fatigue. They use energy efficiency, a whole bunch of metrics that are really good, and it really shows the way that a lot of these technologies people are grappling with at the moment. We've seen Lilium, we've seen Northvolt, that there are middle ways to kind of make that trajectory while you're struggling to get to that commercial endpoint of, for example, transporting customers autonomously. So it's a really cool product. I'd encourage people to check them out. I can't speak highly of them.
Can you remind the name again, please?
Fernride,
Fernride,
F-E-R-N.
Perfect, thank you. And can I have a round of applause for our wonderful women? Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go.
Thanks, guys. And come and say hi if you haven't done that
Continue the
already.
conversation.
Yeah, we will be around all day.
Thank you.